Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 finale of Bosch Legacy. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the Mo situation. Obviously, with everything they've got on Mo, they plan on boxing him into a corner and forcing his hand. Because it's like, right, once he ends up kind of taking the deal they're offering, he'll end up giving out Bosch and Chandler. But even Jade, or Janice is her real name, actually kind of feels bad about the whole situation because she actually does like Mo. And also the complicated thing is, once she's found out about being like, if this all comes back on her, she'll be exposed, and she is a part of this hacking community, and they find out, they will dox her and her family. So, but it's like, don't worry, we'll keep you undercover when this is all said and done, so it'll be fine. Basically making it so that Mo doesn't even know. So I think when it's all said and done, it's kind of a thing of, you get to keep your cover and you can kind of keep things going with Mo, which is so sad too, because at the same time, Mo's kind of, he's like, he feels like this stop and go situation was like, please don't squeeze me, but please don't tease me, as he says, because he feels like every time it feels like we're getting closer towards some form of intimacy, you always back off. And for her, it's just like, right, I don't want to ruin this friendship thing, is because she does legitimately like him, but she's scared because it's like, it feels crossing a whole bunch of ethical boundaries. I mean, you're already kind of getting into that complicated territory because you're lying and manipulating someone. It feels like entrapment, but I don't know the law like that, so it probably doesn't count as entrapment. But either way, it is a situation that she probably is just like staying like, right, if I cross that line, it's extra scummy, and she doesn't want to do that. So even though she really does like him, it's still just kind of that. I mean, maybe even like under the guise of what she's doing, it'd probably just be ethically and morally wrong, just even in the eyes of the law, even being undercover and stuff. But either way, I was wondering whether Mo was kind of on to her, but I was like, maybe not. And then he gets arrested. Sad thing is, he's blaring his music. His phone's on vibrate and it's on the table, so he's not hearing it. So the FBI bust in. They've got him on all of this. It's like, right, we got you for what you did. And I love, you got to give them credit for how they played it. It's like, oh, we're not just taking you down for this. The reason why we know what you did is because, oh, we got an eye on Jade Quinn. So they're threatening Jade. And it's like, if you don't help us, she's going to take the fall for this. So you have to tell us what you did. You have to give us Jade. And you also have to, so that's how they were going to handle that. It's probably just going to be like, hey, Jade went into prison, yada, yada, so on and so forth. That's probably how they were going to handle it. So there would have probably been no her and Mo afterwards anyway, but it would have kept with like keeping her cover. And Mo, first and foremost, Mo would have never known she like betrayed him and stuff like that. I think that's what the real like crux of it would be. But it's like, oh, you have to not only give us Jade Quinn, you also have to give us Bosch and Chandler. I think in that moment when Mo was like, oh, this is what you're after, like, I don't know. Like I said, maybe he knew beforehand. It's hard to say who found out what when, right? So later on, it's like, right, they got him on the hook. He wants a look, especially when he was like, oh, I got to talk to your boss. I want a little more time. I'm like, it feels like he's playing at like something here. But when it's all said and done, like him and Jade are playing Uno, and he's like, yeah, I've got this situation, and you know, because he even said like, oh, I woke up when he was talking to Anthony Michael Hall's character. He was like, yeah, when I woke up this morning, I didn't think I'd end the day as a snitch. So interesting how that kind of comes up in another element of the episode, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So when it's all said and done, though, I love that, like, right, they're going to get him on the wire admitting everything about Bosch. That way they can kind of take him down. But then Mo played that Uno reverse on them, because I just referenced, that's interesting, because I just referred to that last episode because I called what Chandler did to the FBI as kind of an Uno reverse last episode. So funny enough, it would actually be a literal Uno reverse. And well, not literal. Well, literal on the figuratively because of what Mo's doing, but also because they are literally playing Uno. So it's like, it's funny how that happens. But yeah, Mo knows who Janice really is, knows her full name, knows this whole thing's a setup, and she's like, well, we got you on this. It's like, yeah, at best, you got me on trespassing, which isn't enough to try and really get me on anything. You don't have any video footage of me doing all the stuff I did in that building. You also don't like, oh, we have this stuff on the flash drive. It's like, do you? It's set to auto delete after 24 hours. It's like, yeah, you and your FBI pals could actually go check it out for yourself. So Mo did that just because he's like, hey, I want you to know I have this for you. And yeah, in case she probably never bothered looking at it. Because maybe that was also the suspicious thing for Mo even back then. She never bothered looking at the flash drive. I think he was still trying to, I don't know if he was stringing her along even last episode when she's like, because he welcomed her in on like, I think it's like the fact that she never questioned him about the flash drive saying that auto deletes after 24 hours. Maybe he was just kind of like, yeah, she was fine with the files being gone. Like, maybe for him, it's like the fact that she never questioned it means she never bothered looking, and maybe she didn't care enough to look. He probably thought, oh, she has a flash drive and she has the peace of mind knowing she has a, there's justifications for it, but maybe that was kind of like a red flag for Mo. Maybe not. But even he won't tell her how long he's known. He's like, I'll keep you guessing on that part. But it's like, damn, dude. It's like, you guys kind of have nothing on me. Like, at most, you can get me for trespassing, but none of that other stuff is viable. So it's like, and he's like, yeah, they're screwed on this apartment. And she's been exposed now. Granted, not necessarily on her part, but because Mo figured it out. It's like, cool, you are going to make a deal with me where it's like, you're going to quit the FBI when this is all said and done, or I'm going to basically out you to the hacking community, which obviously he wouldn't want to do that, but he would, because it's like, we can't really have a Fed in our community. Like, this is supposed to be a sanctified place for hackers, but it's like, can't have you amongst us. But it's like, if you quit, that's slightly better. And at least I'll know, like, you don't have any authority if you stay amongst our community. I just know I would stay away from you, and I'd probably tell the people around me to probably stay away from you without telling them the truth, you know? Because he also knows, like, probably knows the hacker community, how they would seek retribution against her. So he's doing it for his own sake, for his community's sake of hackers, but also just for her own sake as well. And for him, it's like, I was really into you. And she was like, I liked you too. And he's like, I don't believe you. She's like, yeah, maybe if it was a different life. Because at the end of the day, I was doing my job. And that doesn't make it any better. And Mo's like, right. I do believe she legitimately did like him. So I don't know if we're done with this FBI thing. They tried to come from Chandler. That didn't work out. They played a long game with this whole Mo thing. Did not work out. But I guarantee you they have not let this go yet. So that could always be something we see pop up in the future. We'll have to wait and see. But sad to see things play out that way. I figured, like, I wouldn't have expected, like, things to kind of go down this lane. In regards of, like, I didn't think for a second Mo was going to turn on Bosch and Chandler, but I didn't know if he was going to find out about Janice before. I mean, I thought he was going to just take the fall and just not know the truth about Janice, but it's like, no, once again, hit him with that metaphorical, maybe even technical Uno reverse, because, well, he got Uno in the end and game over and won. So in both the literal game and the figurative game that was going on. So that was an interesting development. We also had a situation with Chandler. She learned that the guy that ID'd Bosch at the bombing, pipe bomb situation last season, he is retracting his cooperation with the FBI because the last thing he wants to be known as is a rat, because all of that circled back to, I guess, because he was going to kind of testify against the Bratva because of the FBI stuff, but they found out, and it's like, cool, to save his own hide. Because his lawyer was like, yeah, we want to make it sure that Aslan is not known as a rat, as a snitch. That's the other element of the episode I was talking about with the snitch element. But so there's everything with Matthew. He wants to try and work with Chandler in her next chapter, but she's like, no, I can't do that. We had this really interesting moment with her and her therapist, and I think this is more parallels between her and Maddie with the aftermath of their respective situations, what Chandler went through because of the Roger situation, and also what Maddie went with the Dockweiler situation. So let's focus on Chandler's side of things really quickly. Well, first and foremost, she talks to her therapist about the consequences of her actions. Like, the fact of the matter is, all she can do is describe herself as who she was before, the Carl Rogers of it all, before he attempted to kill her, and who she was after it. And for her, it's like, no matter how hard I try, I can never be that Hunting Chandler again. This is who I am, the person that's crossing lines I personally thought I would never cross. It's like, yeah, she was kind of that lawyer the way she was, but she was never like a slimy lawyer. She was someone that lawfully used the law in her, and that kind of put her in a bad like, you know, against cops and stuff, sure, but it's like she was never like one of those slimy lawyers. But I think for her, especially this season, and also all the stuff she did last season with the whole Carl Rogers of it all, like her revenge and everything, how that shaped her so much. But for her, it's like, yeah, the consequences of what she lost, because her and Marty, that relationship is not, he nearly lost his practice, his reputation took a hit, that I'm like, even though Chandler's coming out smelling fine on the end of this, I still was thinking like, yeah, her and Marty would never fully be good again, because his reputation still took the hit. Because even if it's like, oh, like all that got dropped last episode, it's still a stain against Chandler, and that would be a stain against Marty. So, and for her, it's like that relationship would never get repaired. And she did what she had to do to survive. And it's like, would she do it over again, knowing what she'd have to suffer, what she'd lose in the end, the price that she would have to pay? And she's like, it is a price that she is willing to pay. Like, this is just who I am now. And she's going forward with that. So this ties into the whole situation. Corrections, last episode and maybe previously, I was confusing the DA with the judge. So they weren't in front of the judge, and she was talking to, like, I guess that DA and the ADA anytime she was talking to them, because she was trying to get deals about this, because they were the prosecutors in the situation against David. So they're trying to get them, she's bringing it in front of a judge about the evidence, kind of even bringing up like, okay, it was most likely from a condom because you found traces of condoms, and it's also the same type of condom that was found in James Allen's like hotel. So it's like there is enough reasonable connection to be like, okay, David was in a relationship with James supplied the DNA for Ellis and Long, which we know Lexi's watch played a part in all of this operation. We even see Lexi's husband there, Vince. I brought it up. I was like, I wasn't like, because he wasn't in this show much except for like 2 or 3 appearances. This is his 3rd appearance. I was like, is he actually the bad? Because I was suspicious of him for a while, but it turns out like he had, like, I think after hearing everything in court, it probably made him go like, oh, this guy actually probably is innocent for what happened. Finding out not only did David not do it, it was other, like, yes, they're not in the same department of law enforcement, but it's still messed up knowing the people responsible for killing your wife were dirty cops. Like, that's gotta like mess with you in some level. But Bosch ended up getting a confession out of Long, because that's the only way they're going to be able to really clear David's name. So Harry made him believe Ellis was still alive and was getting a deal. And so it turns out Ellis is the one that went bananas and killed Lexi, and like what was brutal with it. We'll never fully know the truth, but I'm sure he probably is telling the truth. I mean, we saw like, I mean, to be fair, like we've seen that he had the most aggressive of all of the personality traits and stuff like that, of that partnership. Because our first introduction to him, what was he doing? He was he pointed a gun at a homeless guy to get him away. Like you kind of already knew he was kind of like a douchebag regardless. So it's not that much of a leap to be like, yeah, he was brutal in other capacities and stuff like that. But it's like, because even Long was like, yeah, I assumed the tire iron was like just to break in. I didn't realize he was going to bash her head in. But it's like, oh, we got to make it seem like it was a serial, and you know, he's the one that kind of constructed a lot of the setup against James. So I mean, up against David. So they got this confession, but the DA doesn't want to hear it because he's like, oh, the guy's a little drugged up, yada, yada, making all these excuses. You were given this illegally. But for Chandler, it's like, who cares like how we got it? It's at least gives you a starting point to at least look into things further. But he didn't want to listen. And she's like, you know what? You got 4 hours, Emmett, or I'm going to release this to the public. He's like, well, then you'll be getting into trouble. It's like, yeah, it can't be used in court, but media doesn't care with that. They'll run with it and be like, oh, you didn't jump on this evidence, like, even though you knew it was here in front of you, and you didn't do your due diligence just to protect your own job. And once again, she made it clear, like, this is about the upcoming election. So kind of ended up forcing his hands, and luckily all the charges were dropped against David, and like it was expunged from his record, almost like he was never arrested. So David is free, luckily, because this could have easily been one of those storylines, like something. I mean, he did get beat the crap up in prison by not only the guards but inmates. But it could have easily been one of those sad situations where he died in prison, like someone could have killed him. But luckily, they got the protection put in place for him, so he, you know. But if they hadn't, like, there could have easily been a situation of him dying in prison, being who he was and everything. So being accused of what he had did, with Lexi killing like a cop's wife, essentially. So a sheriff's deputy's wife. But what really surprised me when it was all said and done was Chandler's meeting, which hit me with the gut punch. The moment I saw him, I was like, no! Which is like, oh, it's dope to see him, but at the same time, it's also like, damn. We see Lance Reddick one last time as Irving, which we also find out he's in the private. I think that might have gotten set up at the end of Bosch that he was going in the private sector, but knowing that he's down that route. But I'm like, damn, dude. Like I said, we got the gut punch at the beginning of the season, obviously with Lance Reddick and Annie Wersching, and now it's like this, and it's just like, oh, dude. Because I could definitely see it being a situation where they probably would have sprinkled him in any future seasons of the show. They probably would have sprinkled him in here, just like they did. With Jamie Hector, the actor who plays Jerry, he was like in 1 or 2 episodes last season. He's in like the first 2 episodes of this season. So it probably would have been that. Just like Crates and Barrel make frequent pop-ins. Like it probably could have been like that with Lance Reddick as well. But it's just like, damn, seeing him one last time. Because I wasn't expecting that. I was like, damn, dude, damn. I wonder I'm curious to see what they do. Because some shows will acknowledge that stuff. It might just be a thing of in the future, they just won't mention it. They'll keep Irving alive and just won't reference it anymore in the story. Or maybe I don't know. We'll see what they'll do. Because like I said, some shows for plot, because he's not integral to the plot, they might not reference that. Like Annie's character, like they haven't talked about her character being gone because she hasn't been relevant. Her character wasn't relevant to the plot for a couple. Like I think the last time she was in the plot was like season 5, wasn't she? Like so, like it is that thing of like so because of that, I kind of feel like they probably won't ever mention like, oh, Irving died or anything like that because there's no like relevancy to like the ongoing story. He's here to help out Chandler's situation because Chandler wants to run for DA. Because I think it is that situation. I was curious because I was like, oh, it's her next it's going to be like a private practice, what she's going to do. It's like, no, she's working her way up because she's seen how the system is. And even Irving was telling her, it's like, yeah, we had that whole conversation previously about, do I really want to leave my job behind to kind of go and basically be miserable in that whole like upper echelon, obviously him becoming mayor and stuff like, it's like, do I really want to go down that route? And now she, is she going to do the same? For her, it's not being mayor, it's being DA because she saw how things were running. It's like, you know what? I'm going to use my power for good. Like, and I'm going to make this, I'm going to see this through. So luckily, Irving does back her as she announces it while also shitting on, Emmett Archer at the same time, which Maddie's like, all right, go girl. And it's like, oh, like, are you going to support her? Which even Bosch is like, yeah, she's got my vote. Well, no, Scott had asked him and he was like, oh yeah, she's got my vote. It's like, yeah, that's if she wins. But like Maddie's like, do you ever know Chandler not to win? And it's like, that's very true. So, because I think Bosch knows her enough, like, yeah, working the dark side and stuff like that, sure, but it's like, he sees her now, and working with especially if she's the DA, she gets to determine which job, because the DA office doesn't really, like, go into the VIDS, they typically go on the more prosecuting side of things, so I'm sure that's less, like, working with Chandler in the future would be less dark side going forward because of that, because she's a defense attorney and representing some very bad people, in some cases, and good people in other cases, but it's like, it is a situation of, if they ever did work together in the future, it would be under this capacity. I mean, even Maddie was like, could you end up working with her? And it's like, yeah, but most likely you'd just be handing out subpoenas and driving people places. That's not really the lane I want, my job to be. So he's just going to keep doing his thing as a private detective, but probably still will run in and work with Chandler from time to time. I doubt this is the end. I wonder in the future, will we kind of see the campaign run, or will we see the aftermath of the campaign run and see her win? Is going to be interesting to see. So we also had the situation with Maddie in the aftermath of her killing Ellis. Obviously, there's the investigation to see if she was in the right. Obviously, she even talked to Vasquez about it later. Like, we're going to probably get a little dinged for the fact is we separated because that's not protocol. You're supposed to always have each other's back and be there. We're supposed to be in each other's lines. Like, not the case, but she kind of told everything as it was. But the problem is they hadn't found the gun yet, which is concern, which we all know he had a gun, and she specifically said what make and model it was. But the problem is, it's like, what if they don't? That worry and that concern, because it was a good shoot, but now she's worried about that. She even talks to her dad about it, and her dad comes at it from a different perspective, where it's like, right, you got to know that yes, it was a good shoot, but it doesn't change the fact is you still took a life. That's going to be a heavy thing to carry. Even if because you'd like other cops, Vasquez, other people will tell you you did a good job putting down that piece of crap, but it doesn't change the fact is you're going to start asking yourself, why do I not feel great? Because Harry's been in that situation probably a few times before, especially that first time. There's probably going to be other times too where like I think it's going to be the situation where you never want it to be easy. It's never supposed to get easier. I think it's just a situation of you learn how to process it properly, not push it past like, oh, it means nothing. It's like, no, because he was saying that you have a strong moral compass, and that's like obviously a good quality in you, and it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And she even admits later on when she was talking to Chandler about it that she felt numb to this whole thing, and she was worried that she might lose her empathy because she's feeling so numb. But Chandler's like, the fact is you're even concerned about it just proves to me that if you weren't worried, that's when we should be worried. But the fact is you're worried about what kind of effect this will have on you, that you might become less empathetic. I think that's a good sign that you still have your empathy, that it's still there. So there's that angle to it. But she had this moment with Bosch where she kind of called him out for what he did. It's like, yes, I'm angry at Ellis for putting me in that situation, having to shoot him. I'm mad at you for going off on your own like that. I'm also mad at Mom. It's like, your mom. It's like, yeah, Mom, like, regardless of it all, because if I remember correctly, wasn't she in the middle of an investigation? That's what led to her death. It's been a while, but I think that's how Eleanor died, right? But it's like, Eleanor still died. It's like, you're understandable, like, to be angry at someone for being gone. And now it's like, Harry almost put her in that same situation again. She's like, do you even think about what it would do to me having lost you as well? And he's like, I think about that all the time. And for her, and I think this is a beautiful element of their relationship, despite her being like, hey, I gotta leave. I gotta clear my head. The fact of the matter is, but before she left, she's like, I love you, and kiss him on the head. Like, that's the thing of like, despite us, hey, we might be mad at each other, but gotta let each other know, like, I love you. It's kind of like any relationship. You never want to go, because you never know when the next time could be the last time you see someone, and you want them to know before, like, hey, I might be pissed at you. And even she's like later on telling Bosch, yeah, I'm getting over it. But the fact of the matter is, yes, I'm pissed, but at the end of the day, I do love you. You know, regardless of what I'm saying right now, because I'm heated, I do love you. And I think that's sometimes a very important thing to kind of keep in mind. I just thought that was kind of like a beautiful, just little like pin on that, like, not pin, but like kind of a nice like into that scene essentially, which is that little extra thing. And that's kind of always been their thing, but I think it's just a very important thing even in that moment for like them to have that, like, I love you too, just like regardless of how we're feeling about each other right now. And Bosch gets it. Like I said, I think it will make him rethink a lot of his reckless behavior in a lot of capacities, because yes, that was straight up reckless, going there with no backup. Yeah, Mo and Chandler knew where you were going, but you still went in with no backup. So, and you know, especially with Maddie being like so worried about him. Luckily, when it's all said and done, they are able to find the gun, so that's one less thing on her mind. But all of this is still stuck on her mind at the time, and so Rico wants to be there for her. And she's like, oh, I'm moving out. I found a place. He's like, okay. He kind of looks concerned. But she's like, that doesn't mean we're breaking up. I think maybe even then she knew. But maybe she didn't want... Because she even says later on, like, hey, we... later on saying, like, oh, me and Rico broke up. He just doesn't know it yet. But Bosch is like, yeah, she did. Like, when he's helping her pack, he knew. Rico, you could tell that look on his face, like, oh, like, what this meant. It's like, once again, I think it's so interesting. Like, I think this is the first time we've ever seen one of her relationships end on... Well... We didn't actually even see it in, but like having that conversation, because like every other relationship and dynamic she's had over the course of the series has always been like an off-screen breakup. So, because I can't remember if that was after or before she had learned the story about her mom and dad. I mean, I think it's just like Rico would have just been Maddie can have her own reasons for breaking up, but I don't know if we really know what those reasons could be. It's probably a culmination of just everything. It's just the Dockweiler of it all, then also this whole situation with Ellis, and her issues with her dad, the way he handled stuff. It's just the FBI. Like, there's just so many things this season. I think it's just she needs kind of a clean break from everything. But even Vasquez being there for her, like, hey, because I think Vasquez can read the tea leaves she could read the tea leaves, being like, yeah, those two are about to break up. Like, and Rico was feeling it too, but Vasquez is like, whether it's in a year or two or even never, just know I'm always there for you. So, because she also learned this episode that Dockweiler died because there was a cop that had gotten some info for Bosch, and it was about someone in prison. It didn't even cross my mind that it would be about Dockweiler, but he was in intensive care. Like, I think they were beating him up maybe, and I don't know, because we didn't get the details of it. All she was saying, like, hey, just don't do anything crazy with this info. And Bosch was like, I promise not to. And you're like, he's going to do something. Like I said, at the time, it didn't even cross my mind that it was about Dockweiler. But it turns out he died, and turns out he overdosed. But Bosch is like, yeah, most likely they held him down and they injected him. And I brought this up previously. Like, I know, like, the two people who get it the worst are sexual abusers and cops who will get it the worst in prison. But when it comes to abusers, I once again, I've never looked too deeply into it. I'm also basing this purely on like TV shows and stuff I saw, but I think that is based in reality. I know child abusers in particular, because plenty of people in there have like kids of their own, or maybe have a younger sibling that is like a piece, like you are the scum of the earth if you're a child abuser, rightfully so, because you are the scum of the earth. But I don't know if all rapists kind of get lumped into that same category. I thought there was like a delineation, but maybe it's not. If you're abusing, because like everyone's been in that situation, because it isn't just like a child situation, even if it's like an adult situation. So like, hey, people will have like sisters or people they think like, oh, that could have been my mom, that could have been my aunt, that could have been my sister, this and that. So I think maybe that's the reason why they are probably all lumped into that. All abusers those kinds like are lumped into that same category. Like, you're all scum, But we had the situation at the end, which I didn't remember. Preston, whatever his name is, I think he's got to be someone like that came up with maybe in the original show, and I just don't remember. I mean, obviously, I think the actor's name is Chris Browning. Seen him in a multitude of things. He's one of those actors where you're like, I've seen you in so many different things over the years, but I'm like, that character's probably someone we know, and I'm super blanking on it. But the moment he's calling, and I'm like, oh, Bosch, don't tell me. And Maddie's like, I'm his daughter. He's like, oh, so you don't want to say. It's like, all right, just tell him I handled that thing for him. I was like, no, you didn't. And Maddie's like, what did you do, Dad? And cut the credits. I was like, shit, so that's what we're setting up for next season? I mean, because I knew something was up because they replayed that line in the recap at the beginning where Bosch was like, I would never lie to you, Maddie. The fact is, I was like, what is that? Now he has to tell her the truth. I mean, he wasn't lying to her before. He just chose not to admit to anything when it came to the FBI investigation stuff. But now it's like, he did this. And that had been this whole conversation where Maddie was like, yeah, I don't want to end up like my dad. That line between justice and vengeance has always been a line he's kind of blurred, and I tried not to, but now it's become a part of me. And she wanted Dockweiler to suffer in prison, like him dying is the easy way out. Now the question then becomes, did Bosch have something to do with it? Now, I think the only reason why Bosch would probably do something is of what he learned in that report or whatever it was. Maybe it's like Dockweiler would have gotten transferred, or he would have had a cushy thing. Who knows what it was, but maybe whatever it was, it made Bosch decide, I'm going to take him out. Potentially. We don't have the full story, but it feels like that's where we're heading in that direction. But then there's also the Daryl thing. I brought this up last episode. I'm like, are we really, like, I thought maybe we get some hints to it in this finale. No. But it felt like that seemed, hey, that could just be like, hey, Harry, you're not a cop anymore. Anyone who's ever come after, who has issues with you will probably try and come after you. Maybe that's all that setup is. But that feels like that's inkling for a storyline for next season. Maybe not. I don't know. But I kind of got that feeling like it felt too poignant. It just felt too specific and too like, oh, this is someone that's got beef with Bosch coming back up to be like, oh yeah, you're not a cop anymore now. So we'll see how that plays out. But based on, as you can tell by what I said, the show was renewed for a third season. So I'm excited to see what season 3 has in store for us, what the storyline's going to be. Like I was talking about before, I'm curious whether or not by the time we get to next season, will Chandler already be DA? Will it be during her campaign season? And will her and Harry kind of work together? I mean, what does this mean for Maddie and Bosch's relationship? I was already feeling like things were probably going to be a little strained because of that conversation of being in her dad's shadow. I was curious what that might mean in the long run, but now this could really end up straining their relationship too, especially like she went to see her mom's memorial and kind of learned, about how they got together, how they first met, which I'm like, did we as the audience know that, or is this our first time hearing that story too? I'm curious. I don't feel like I remember that, but I remember some story beats from Bosch, but like obviously I've seen everything. I think I've seen every season one time. I don't think I've seen any of the seasons multiple times. I could be mistaken. I yeah, I don't. I might have seen every season 6. Might be the only one I think I might have watched because every other season I was catching up with until season 6 premiered. That was the first season I watched as it when it first came in up. But because I might have rewatched 6 in preparation for 7, I don't remember. But I've definitely only seen the other seasons one time because I was binging them in preparation as I was catching up on the show. But either way, that's kind of not well. It's relevant to the point I'm trying to make. But either way, I'm excited to see what storylines we get next season, where all this ends up taking us. Like I said, specifically where Maddie and Harry's relationship is going to be like. I'm sure this. I'm curious to see if the season immediately picks up with this conversation or not. We'll see, because it's like, wow, did you really go full? Yeah, even though he just told her oh, no more dark side cases for me after this whole David situation, but it's like, yeah, now we're dealing with a different type of dark side, and Maddie coming and dealing with the realization of my dad crossed that line. Regardless of it, I didn't want you to do this. I wouldn't want you to do this. He keeps pushing the whole angle of Maddie having morals once again, and it's an element I brought up last episode. He knows Maddie's better than him. He wants Maddie to be better than him, needs Maddie to be better than him. Learn from me and be the best cop possible, but make sure you don't follow my footsteps too closely. Do as I say, not as I do, type of thing. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see what season 3 has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good